our webinar for today, Building Emotional Intelligence into the Contact Centre. I'm Rachel and I'm your webinar chairperson for today. We've got a great agenda, got two fabulous speakers. We've got Jonty Pearce from Call Centre Helper.
Hi everyone. Hi.
And we've got Dawn Redman, who's a Call Centre consultant. Hi Dawn.
Hi.
And Jonty, do you want to share with everyone what's been happening in Call Centre Helper recently?
Well, with a couple of things we're doing. We've just finished, or we're in the process of testing, a multi-channel call center simulator that enables you to book calls, emails, and web chats. It's a bit like an Erlang calculator, but for multi-channel. It's a simulation. It was done by my son as his A-level computing project, which was quite impressive. So if anyone wants to have a go at that, just drop me a line. And I can send you a link. It's still in latter testing phases, so we're keen to get some experience on that. And today on Call Centre Helper, we've published an article on abbreviations that can speed up wrap-up time. So we're all familiar, you type in your wrap-up notes, use things like info instead of information, use cust instead of customer. But we've also developed about 541 abbreviations we found in various contact centres. Anything from COT is change of title. These tend to be typed in capitals rather than AOS is already on system. So just a range of things that if you deploy in your call center, may be able to speed up the data entry process. So a number of quite exciting projects we've got on so far.
Fab. And Dawn, anything you've seen interesting recently?
Yeah, I've been spending quite a bit of time judging for the CCMA for their European Awards coming up. So I've seen a lot of phenomenal people and process while I've been travelling around the country. So yeah, it's been a very interesting couple of months.
Brilliant. So as always, we're taking a replay of today's webinar, which will be available along with slides from both our great speakers today on this web link, callcenterhelper.com/recorded webinars. We'll be doing a chance to win a bottle of champagne or chocolates for the best tip. If you go to the chat room, simply type in #tip for a tip or #question to ask one of our panelists a question. Just some housekeeping. So if you log into our chat room, it's www.callcenterhelper.com/chat. And the added bonus of logging into the chat room is that you can download our webinar slides from the speakers. And at the end, you can download the chat log of everything that's been happening. So I want to start today's webinar with a poll, which is, on a scale of 1 to 5, how emotionally intelligent is your contact center? Let me just launch it for you now. Is that showing up?
It is indeed, yeah.
Okay, so 5 is great levels of rapport and empathy. 4, generally good but somewhat inconsistent. 3, varies considerably between advisors. 2, we try our best. And 1, not very much. Dawn, what would you hope to see or expect to see?
I think what I've been seeing recently is quite a few 5s, great levels of rapport and empathy, specifically in more of the areas that deal with difficult customers, difficult calls, so pay-as-you-go energy places like that.
Okay, I'll close off the poll now and share the results. So as you can see, 52% say 3, varies considerably between advisors, but next one is 33%, so generally good. So Jonty, what do you think of the results?
Probably no great surprises there. I mean, it's quite good to see that number 4, generally good but somewhat inconsistent, is pretty high. I think. Sort of, and it's also quite encouraging that there's not too much down the bottom end of the scale. But I think it's a bit like my old school reports. It's like could do with improvement.
Could do better.
Yeah, tries hard, but could do better.
Fab. So earlier we actually asked the question, and we're going to see what the rest of the audience is thinking. What's your biggest challenge with developing more rapport and empathy with customers? I know a lot of people are saying they're inconsistent amongst advisors. Dawn, what would you suggest in that sort of situation?
I think it is a significant that the people are the ones who drive the rapport and the relationship building with your customers. So I think strategically you have to look at your culture, your organizational culture. Is that a driver that allows your people to feel that they can build good relationships in your value system? And then at its lowest point, the actual individual. If it's a scripted call, very difficult to build rapport. If it's not scripted, it's a lot easier. So there's quite a lot of variables in there, but there's some big things like organizational culture and some simple things like, is it scripted or isn't it?
Great. Jonty, actually we've had one in from Lisa, and she said, I'm working in the training department, and the biggest challenge is to get the agents to understand the importance of rapport and what it is and how to master it. What would you suggest in that sort of situation, Jonty?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, and it's one where you almost have to do some role playing, and where you put up a number of scenarios and you ask advisors about how they feel about that. And I'll be doing a couple of examples of just some statements later, but where you can actually explore, and you can do it with perhaps some cool recordings about how they feel, because emotions are really all about feelings and trying to feel like the customer would feel. So I think that role playing is probably the one of the areas I'd explore in there.
Emma's actually said, rapport is just a conversation. We approach it as you don't go and build rapport with friends or with something you fancy. You have a conversation, which I really like. Okay, and to go into the first part of the agenda, I'm delighted to hand the baton over to Jonty, who will be taking us through his sights on building emotional intelligence.
Okay, well, let's see if I can just put the screen up there. Hopefully you can see that. Yeah. Okay, well, I've got three little areas that I've seen as I've in various visits to different contact centers that I think will help to improve emotional intelligence. The first one I spotted was in a trip to the British Gas Call Centre a couple of years now ago, where they looked at different personality types and then tried to treat customers differently. So what they did is recognize that you have different styles of dealing with people, and that could be different for a customer or for an advisor. And they effectively took a version of the Myers-Briggs model. Now, you notice on everyone's desk here, they have these little information cards with the different people with their photo on. And they have some career progression. So Rob is an advisor and Rianne is an expert. But what they also did is they put their personality type on here. So you see that Rianne is a controller and Rob Parry is a thinker. So they work in different ways. So here's an example of the 4 different categories. Anyone familiar with Myers-Briggs? There's 16 different personality types, but that's a bit difficult to tell on the phone. So they simplifies it down to 4 levels. And so a customer could be a controller, an entertainer, thinker, or a feeler, and so could the advisor. So just to give you an example, a controller is somebody, if they phone up and they've got a problem, they just want it answered as quickly as possible. They don't want to have a big conversation about what the weather's like or anything like that. They just want the problem answered as quickly as possible. On the other hand, an entertainer would probably like to tell you the whole story about what caused the problem and would actually probably appreciate to have a bit of a chat on the phone as well. So if you try and engage a controller in a chat, it's probably not going to match very well. If you get a thinker going through to a controller, the advisor is going to have to adapt their personality style. So that's sort of fine in theory. So how does that work in practice? Well, here's a question I'd like to do, and I'm going to put a poll up on this. So a caller is calling into the call center to find out when his delivery is coming, as it didn't arrive this morning as scheduled. So what is your natural instinct? Would you respond to his anger by apologizing, hoping he'll calm down? Do you try to get to the bottom of the problem? You want to understand why this has happened before you consider what next to do to the person. Do you let him get his rant over, then do what you can to lighten the mood? Or do you tell him to calm down, that it's not your fault? Now, on here, it may be that there's a couple of those that you would do. So you can perhaps put two down in there, and there's no right or wrong answer. These are just different things that you may do to the customer. So if you'd just like to vote on that and put in the your natural instinct. This is not what you actually say to them, but this is what your natural instinct would be. Okay, let's just close that there, and I will share the results over there. So we see quite a variety here. 43% would respond to the anger by apologizing. 71% would try to get to the bottom of the problem. You want to understand why that's happened before. 45% of you would let him get his rant over. So because you can vote for more there. And I think, well, it's good that people don't tell the customer to calm down, but that's certainly a different approach. So what does this all mean? Well, if I just hide that, and hopefully you can now see this on the screen. So if you respond to the anger by apologizing, hoping he'll calm down, you're probably a feeler. If you try to get to the bottom of the problem and you want to understand why it's happened before you consider what to next, you're probably a thinker. If you let him get his rant over first, then you're probably, and do what you can do to lighten the mood, you're probably an entertainer. So there's a number of different personality types, and some of that is then recognizing what is your personality type, and then the real trick of it is in the first section of a phone call, try and identify what personality type the caller is. Now that's a very high level. There's a great article on Call Center Helper on how to do this, which was written by Jill Dean of Powertrain. Powertrain was the consultancy company that came up with the simplified Myers-Briggs model, and there's a link at the bottom of the at the bottom of the page there that you can follow up. If you want to get hold of a copy of these slides, if you go into the chat room, callcenterhelper.com/chat, and you can do that. So that's the first one I want to talk about, was personality types. The other one is, I think, a lot of emotional intelligence is about showing genuine interest in a caller. So here's another scenario. A customer calls to ask about holiday insurance, if you're a holiday insurance call center. So the agent says, where are you going? Because you obviously need to know where in the world for what quote you're going to give them. Customer says Tenerife. So what happens next on the call? Well, if you're in a transactional call center, you carry on as quickly and you say, that's the price, off you go. You try to keep the call as short as possible. But if you're trying to build rapport, rather than going, yes, thank you for that, let me enter it into the system, you could say something like, oh, I bet it's lovely there at this time of year. Nice to escape the rain that we've got. Or, oh, how nice. Have you been there before? Or even, I went there 3 years ago and I really, really loved it. It starts to just take something from being completely transactional and starting to lighten the load. Now, that may have an impact in the short term on average handling time, but I'm seeing an awful lot of contact centers now who are no longer using average handling time as an agent metric. And then the third area I want to just touch on briefly is about the use of empathy statements. This is an article we're going to be publishing in the next few weeks on Call Center Helper. And this is starting to develop words and phrases that can help to build empathy. Those are things such as personal pronouns, active verbs, and also authenticity. So here's an example, personal pronouns. And if you're going to start building empathy in statements, words such as I and you are really quite important. There is a tendency to use things like we will do this, or the system says this, or it needs to be referred to this department. So if you use I rather than you, it tends to indicate to the listener that you're understanding, that you're personally involved, and also that you're interested in them as an individual. So just a simple little tweak. Start using I and you and stop doing less of the we. And it'd be quite interesting if anyone has started doing this, and particularly listening to the call recordings, if you'd like to share your experience in the chat room, would be good. The second one I want to talk about is active verbs. So I'd like you to consider 2 verbs. This will be resolved by our team, and I will ask our team to resolve this. So I'm just going to pop this up in a short little poll. Which of these 2 phrases do you prefer? This will be resolved by our team, or I will ask our team to resolve this. So let's just have a look at which one our audience prefers. So I'll just share the results here up on the screen. 72% of you say, I will ask our team to resolve this. 28% would say, this will be resolved by our team. So I think we're already starting to see in the audience, there's a preference there. The difference is the verb, and it's the difference of I will ask the team to resolve, which is an active verb, as in will be resolved, which is past participle, which is a passive version of the verb, if my English is correct. The danger is that this will be resolved is anonymous. It lacks personality and has no underlying responsibility. Whereas if you say, I will ask our team to resolve this, what you're actually saying is it makes it an issue that there is a real person actively working to fix an issue who might, I know what you're saying, that you're going to go off and fix the problem. It's just you will ask the team to resolve it by logging it on the system. So you might potentially physically chase up the team until it's done. It's just a much more positive way. So I think there's a lot of different areas where we could go off and have a look at how you could use active rather than passive verbs. Yes?
Hi. Yeah, Emma's actually just said about this in the chat room, that it's all about ownership, no ownership, and the customer thinks it's not going to get resolved.
Yes.
So I thought that summed it up quite nicely.
I think it does indeed. So if anyone has been using active rather than passive verbs, be interesting to do. The big danger with this, though, is if you say, this will be resolved, or I'll get this resolved, don't you worry about it, trust me. I think what you're trying to say is that you will personally get involved, not you'll necessarily resolve it. There's big danger that you tell the customer what they want to hear rather than actually what's going to happen. So where possible, replace passive verbs with active verbs and add in a sense of immediacy into some of the phrases used. But any of these empathy statements have to be authentic. You can't just read off a script. If you read out standard phrases without being authentic, that will create resentment and can increase anger. Be genuine, be honest, and be yourself. It's more important to be natural, calm, and positive than to get the exact phrasing right of trying to read off these phrases. So here's a number of things that can help with authenticity, and that's to develop more of a natural tone and less formal ways of speaking. Now, the problem is if you work in any environment where you have compliance, where you have to read out those compliance statements, that instantly becomes formal. One call center, interestingly, bit of a diversion, used to bring actors in who would encourage agents to read out poetry, so that when they actually read out the compliance statement, rather than saying, dear Mr. Smith, I do have to tell you that your house will be at risk if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage statement. Just sounds dull. Whereas you can say it more naturally. Hello, Mr. Smith, I do have to tell you that if you don't keep up your mortgage payments, then your house may be repossessed. You can do it in a much brighter way rather than as if you've just read it out 50 times already today, which you possibly have. Some other ones that can help is if you use words, contractions, thanks rather than thank you, hi instead of hello, and things like, enjoy the rest of your day rather than goodbye. So you've got to avoid the have a good day syndrome. Other contractions, short terms of verbs, can be quite useful. Your, can't, he's, don't. And it's quite interesting because often these are some of the things that can be knocked out of advisors by the quality scoring process. So there we are, 3 different ways: personality types, just engaging in general conversation, and using empathy statements. So those are my 3 tips I've got on improving building rapport. Back to you, Rachel.
Thank you very much. Take back over control. So now we're going to have some top tips and questions from the audience. I think the chat room's slightly quiet at the moment, so still chance to get in your questions and opinions. Lisa said, rapport is easy with nice customers and really, really hard with difficult ones. Dawn, what would you suggest in that sort of situation?
This might sound a little contradictory, but ideally with difficult customers, the way to do it is to continue to be assertive, confident, clear. And you can still build rapport, and it's just a matter of just continuing down a vein with that person and building their confidence that you know what you're doing, you know what you're talking about, and you genuinely want to help them. They will eventually, faced with this assertive approach, they will eventually meet with you, and you'll find a place to agree. But it is difficult. There's no two ways about it. It is difficult. But with assertion, you will get there.
I think
my tip.
Yeah, and I think there's also an element that we tend to, with difficult customers, tend to rush them rather than necessarily listening, because it can be quite difficult. One technique I find quite useful is to recap what they're saying. So, Mr. Smith, if I understand this right, you've contacted us 4 times and we still haven't resolved your problem, and this is the situation. And so you kind of, by recapping, you're able to not, and it's not rapport as in, we're down at the pub and we're having a great time. It's just that we're on the same level, we're understanding the same sort of frustration you've got. And then you can say, I can imagine how frustrating that can be for you.
Yes, you can.
Which also is another way of developing not necessarily rapport, but help it to at least show some empathy.
Thanks. We've had a tip in from Emma, who said, we have a management course on EQ, and this helps support it in the call centre. The agents get training on it through our sales training, but it's imperative that the leaders in the business display it so it becomes part of the culture. Jonty, I don't know if you had any thoughts on that one.
Yeah, if people aren't familiar, EQ stands for emotional quotient. It's a bit like IQ, but the emotional part of it. So trying to develop what effectively becomes emotional intelligence as opposed to straightforward intelligence. Yeah, it's certainly that in sales, being more emotionally intelligent does lead to more sales. I think it's also a great thing in terms of customer service as well. And but yes, you do need to get the leaders in the business to display some intelligence as well, because they can be a bit abrupt. I think Paul Cooper, a good friend of mine, once said it's not that people don't listen to you as a leader, it's that they do listen to you, and they do actually see, do your actions match your words, and that can be a very powerful, good and bad.
Thank you. We've had a question in from Sam, who said, in regards to this poll, do you not think that this will be resolved, advises the customer that it will be done, and I'll ask our team, sounds like it might be done. What are your thoughts? I think, Jonty, we half covered that, but...
Well, I think there is danger with this. It will be resolved. Is certainly a definite, different statement, unless you're absolutely certain in the way that your processes and procedures work. It could be just language that the customer wants to hear. Whereas I think if you said, I will pass it across to be, to our advisors or to our escalation team, it is really explaining what the next step of the process is. And one of the big problems, I think, is that we do tend to say it will be resolved rather than taking them through what the next part of the process. Quite often when I've got a complaint, they say it's going to be resolved. And I say, well, what happens if it isn't? They go, oh, no, don't worry about that, because it will. You think, well, it's my 3rd time of phoning up, so I don't have a lot of faith in the system. So, Dawn, I don't know if you've got any thoughts.
I think for me, it's the language. So you can say things like, I can personally assure you, Mrs. Smith, that I will take this member of my team. And if you use names, that works really well. So you can say, you know, my name's Dawn Redman. I can personally assure you that I'll take accountability for this complaint. I have a team of 6 people. Anne will deal with it. I will make sure Anne rings you back tomorrow. You're right about the process being explained as well, John. So people want to know what will happen next. And if you consider in anything that you're doing, if you're taking something back to a department store or you're taking your car back for service, anything that you need to have an understanding that it's going to be put right, the times you will feel best is when somebody says, this will happen tomorrow, I'll ring you in an hour, the bill will come then. When you have the detail on what the next steps are, even if it's not a full resolution, at that point, you know what's going to happen next. Your expectations met, and I just think you feel so much better.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So we've had a tip in from Lisa, who said we also call it partnership language. It's all about what we can do together. Our staff gets individual one-to-one coaching to help them achieve this. So very much to do with language. We've had a tip in from Laura, who said we're really trying to engage agents regarding empathy and rapport. We note that not everyone can empathise naturally with customers, so some agents really struggle with this. We've created a post box in our call centre, and we ask the agents to fill in a form from a call where they feel that they have really tried to empathise with the customer or built a really nice rapport. At the end of the month, we look at all of these slips and we listen to the calls. We reward the agent for what we consider is the winning call. We also have a star board where we add other agents' names onto stars that is based in the contact centre to show and encourage other agents to try and better themselves. Dawn, I think that's really nice, don't you think?
I think that's brilliant. I've actually seen a living example of this up in Scotland recently, and they do exactly a similar kind of thing, but exactly the point of listening to a good call, because you don't know what you don't know. So what is a good call? And if you can't train somebody into it, if they can hear somebody really empathizing with a customer and getting a winning solution at the end of it, that's priceless. That's the way to do it. And to reward somebody for that is just going to make sure that those values and that kind of language just continues. People will copy that. Brilliant. Great idea.
Okay, I think we've got a few more tips coming in. Delia says, an apology means nothing if you do not understand the cause, which is great. And Mark said, often rapport and empathy depends on the agent's mood, unfortunately. Jonty, how could you suggest kind of changing the mood?
Well, it certainly depends on the culture. Mood, though, is one of the things that's very heavily influenced by things such as, has the agent had breakfast? Have they had the ability to get out at lunchtime and go for a walk? There are things you can do. Some of the better call centres now have toasters and bring in some bread and jam, so you can grab yourself a quick piece of toast before your shift, which keeps you going. And there's a lot of things around wellness now in terms of encouraging people to go out for a walk, or just to be able to just get away from the desk and just let some of that stress go that can build up, or just physically being sat at your desk for a long period of time.
We've had a tip in from Olivia, who said, PEARLS, this acronym is useful for building rapport. It stands for partnership, empathy, acknowledgement, respect, legitimization, and support. So, for example, by saying, who wouldn't be frustrated about that, you are legitimizing the issue. Dawn, I think that's quite a nice acronym.
Brilliant example. The very word legitimizing is going to make the customer feel better the minute they feel you're doing that. And when you say that, when you're agreeing with them, when you're repeating what the issue is, you're empathizing, but you are legitimizing. I think that's great. Love it.
And final tip from Carol, who said, listen, recap, take ownership and follow through. I think that's what you were suggesting with, wasn't it, John T?
I think
About
that's
recapping.
Recapping, but I think the other one, the key one on there, is the taking ownership and follow through. There is a danger that we listen, we recap, we claim to take ownership, then we just log it on the system. It all gets forgotten about, and then the caller, it may be logged on the system, but it doesn't necessarily get the follow through. And I think the follow through is the real key bit that's often missing.
Thanks for that. So we're moving on in the agenda, and delighted to pass the baton metaphorically over to Dawn Redman. I will do that now for you. There we go. Hopefully you get a notification, Dawn.
Yeah.
Fab.
Can you see everything up?
We can indeed.
Yep.
Brilliant. Okay. So, building emotional intelligence into the contact centre. The big question, and we still need to ask this question, especially from the poll results we've seen today, is why? What will it make as a difference? Well, it's really quite simple. It works incredibly well. I've used two examples, Martin Luther King and Adolf Hitler, completely diametrically opposed, as we all know, but ideally phenomenal orators, very passionate men, and used their emotional intelligence. They were both incredibly high in emotional intelligence to make these phenomenal movements. One that is, revered still today, one that we run and will run a mile from if we ever see again. But the emotional intelligence is the thing that makes it. A passionate, committed speaker, it's the thing that makes it important to you as an individual. It resonates with you. So can we train it in? When we were looking at some of the questions that were coming up in the chat room, people were saying, I find it difficult if I've got some of my agents who are a bit moody, or, some are good at it, some are bad at it. That came up in the poll. You can't really train it in, but you can develop it. Emotional intelligence is how people feel or perceive things. So it is something that you can develop by putting them in situations or allowing them to be in situations where they can refer to something that worked well for them, something that didn't. I used to get called a witch quite a bit when I was at work. Not because I'd like to think I was a bad contact centre manager, but purely because I used to perceive that we had an issue around things, perhaps a little bit earlier than other people. And I think that's because over the years, the thing that I honed particularly well and tried to hone was my emotional intelligence, dealing with people. And that gives you a little bit of an advantage because it allows you to usually source the problem once you know you've got one. So talking about perception, that picture there should give you a little idea of where I'm going with this one. As you can see, the surfer is saying, keep telling yourself it's just a dolphin. His emotional intelligence, however, will be desperately telling him it's definitely not a dolphin. It's a great white, and it's probably going to eat him. But perception is around what we tend to see. We form perceptions about things based on what the visual is. Now, we've not got that advantage in a contact centre, especially if they're on a call. But when we can see what the issue is, REI kind of comes into play a little bit quicker. So what do you hear? And this is really key. We've mentioned it a lot already today, but listening is the variable that will help you the most. Listen to what the customer's saying. Listen to how they're saying it. Are they angry? Are they upset? Are they quietly trying to keep reiterating the same issue again and again and again? If you have a good listening technique, then you'll be able to pick out bits of information that will help with that rapport building. So a little bit like John T said, if you're selling holiday insurance and they say, oh, they're going to Tenerife and they've been before, you can say, oh, you can start to build a conversation talking to them about Tenerife. If they've got a complaint and they tell you something really key. For example, you know, I haven't had my benefits this week. That's completely key if you're chasing them for money. It gives you an advantage and gives you an idea of what you might or might not be able to do next. Clearly, that will depend on the processes and the procedures within your contact centres. But that's the what do you know bit. What do you already know from your systems and from your history file that you've got up on screen that can help you make a decision based on what you're hearing, the feeling that you're getting from the way the customer's talking to you, and what you know. Again, great example of this up in Scotland with particularly vulnerable customers where they are developed, again, trained to listen incredibly intently to everything the customer says and use a questioning technique to gather as much information to enable them to, one, build a rapport, but two, more importantly, give the customer confidence that they will handle that call. And a little bit like we said right at the beginning of the webinar, with no average handle time charts around the contact centre, no wallboards putting pressure on people to finish that call, it allows them to immerse themselves in the discussion with the customer and decide, which is the fourth thing, what they're going to do next. I do think that listening to difficult calls, if it's something that you can do within your contact centre, if you've got speech analytics and you can capture calls, put them into a place where your team managers can take staff to listen, your agents to listen to what is perceived a good call, it's a brilliant, incredibly powerful thing. Value systems. I make absolutely no apologies for having a picture of the Clintons and a picture of the Trumps, although I don't know if our friend in Toronto will be laughing into the screen at this moment in time. The reason I talk about value systems with emotional intelligence is you need to understand the value system of your organisation. Now, these two pictures are quite recent pictures that I picked up off the web, clearly prior to the vote, where the Clintons were definitely trying to give an impression from the Christmas card posty picture, and the Trumps were giving a different view. Now, again, my perception is that somebody else's could be completely different, but values are inherently key to how your people, your agents who are talking to your customers, how they deal with the customer, because the values start at the top. The values are what define you as an organisation, and the values that you show and display within your business will be utilised and used by the people dealing with your customers. The pictures are purely there to illustrate the different type of values that you will see. But there's a question here for all of us today. And it's around personal resilience. That's something else that it comes from a value system. Everybody that you recruit within your contact centre has value systems based on their experience, the way they were brought up, their culture, their belief system. Pretty much, very much like the two pictures you see before you. And based on that, that's the kind of understanding you need to have about the people who are working for you before you let them loose on your customers. So value system is, again, quite key. How do they feel about things? Are they people who will naturally empathise or not? And the way you have progressed through life can sometimes determine whether this is the right job for you or not. Traditionally, we've always looked at capability, and we've looked at intelligence quotient as opposed to emotional quotient. More and more, we're realising that people who've got high emotional intelligence are actually better at solving problems, are traditionally more successful than people with high IQ. So, culture. What is your organisational culture? It's the big ticket thing. Jonty again mentioned earlier about somebody who said to him that the way he behaves and the way he speaks is people listen, people look, and they take notice. The culture is the first thing that people notice when they walk into your organisation. Culture is about a set of value. It even determines the way you dress at work, because we look around and what we see and what we see as behaviours displayed is how we then fit in. It also determines whether people stay within your organisation, whether or not they decide to stay for, reasons like pay is a lot less relevant now than it is as to whether or not they feel that they actually physically fit with you, with the people that they work with on a daily basis, and certainly with the leadership team. Your culture is what you have to have your leadership team drive and embed and basically eat, sleep and breathe in order to make sure that the people that you attract to your organisation stay. And once you know what kind of people you need, you have to make sure that they're going to be happy with the culture that they experience when they join you. The single biggest thing I ever noticed in contact centre management that was driven by culture, or was the big measure that everybody had a problem with, but it took a lot of persuading the exec that the culture was making a big impact on it, was attrition. Everybody's got attrition in the contact centre and everybody has a view on it. Your culture is the first place to start. Just look at what it feels like to work in your organisation. We've all kind of done the straightforward stuff, like ask people to do, release interviews or leaving interviews, why did you leave? And there's an argument that says a lot of what you've got written down, you've kind of got to be a little bit cynical about. You need to sit with people and you need to talk to them and you need to ask them what it was. What was the straw that broke the camel's back? What was it that made them leave your organisation? Because if you can do that and if you can work out what it is, then certainly if it's your culture, you've got a fighting chance to put it right. If it's not, then whatever it is, you can review and look at. But I promise you, a lot will be around the culture. People stay in jobs where, to be fair, they could have got paid more somewhere else. They might have had different, better hours somewhere else, but they stay because they like it. They like the people and they like what they do. So that's the last bit about how do we sell it. Selling it is really quite simple. What people are looking for now is a culture that allows them to have more freedom, perhaps of their contracted hours, more flexibility around start times, finish times, more flexibility about time off, sabbaticals. At a conference last week, there are some organisations that are doing this brilliantly, absolutely brilliantly. And one very brave organisation is allowing all of their contact centre people to pick their own shifts, pick their own holidays, book their own holidays. And at this moment in time, and I'm sat here with my fingers crossed just for them, it's working. Because it's a little bit like empowering the people who are dealing with the customer base to come back after the breaks, get back on the phones without having to tell them. They are seeing that it's busy and they are coming back from the breaks. They know when there are busy times because they can see when other people are on holiday, because they're discussing within their teams whether or not it's the right time to take some time off. They're actually making very grown-up decisions because the accountability is sitting with them. So selling, being a part of your organisation, joining your organisation, is about what you have as a package. Not just the standard straightforward terms and conditions about pay and stuff like that. The package. What will attract me to come and work with you? So, recruiting is going to be a hell of a lot different. On the right-hand side, 10 reasons you should hire me. It kind of made me smile when I saw this, because this is very, very similar to an actual CV that came into me that looked not dissimilar to that. And it pretty much started with, I am awesome. The fact that made me smile is the start to me reading the CV. Other than that, I might not have got any further. But the fact that somebody was telling me they were awesome kind of gave me an idea that I ought to read a little bit more. But recruiting is going to be a hell of a lot different. I traditionally have had issues around recruitment, specifically around the fact that what I was seeing were people with high IQ and low EQ. And what I wanted was people with high EQ. I wanted people with high emotional intelligence, people who could come in and start to understand what we were trying to do as a business and how we needed our customers to feel when they left a call. How we wanted them to feel when they came on, but more importantly, how we wanted them to feel when they left. I wanted them to feel that they trusted us, that we'd taken ownership of that call and that issue, that we understood as a business what their problems were, and that they believed we were going to put that right. Now, if you've also got to pull together a package to attract these people, I've put millennials, Generation X, good old baby boomers like me. From a successful format, I don't, begin to tell you that I've got all the answers, but the things that I do know are we have to work with recruiters, and recruiters have certainly got to work with us to ensure that we get the right people, and that's people with good emotional intelligence, high emotional intelligence. Some of the most highly intelligent people have been some of the biggest failures. Richard Branson has phenomenal emotional intelligence, but he'd be the first person to tell you that he failed at school and he failed in a number of businesses. But the defining factor is this personal resilience that people with high emotional intelligence tend to have. Personal resilience to just deal with the tangible, not kind of reach a point or get into a situation where they're worrying about what they don't know. They deal with the here and now, they deal with the tangible, which means that your customer feels that they are the focus of all the attention. They're pretty good at that. It's key in establishing emotional intelligence, personal resilience. So millennials who feel that they're working for an organisation that's got a nice package are more likely to give you that kind of commitment. Generation X, same from them. Baby boomers like me, definitely. But what you're going to have is packages that fit all kinds of people. That's going to be the successful format, attracting lots of different people, having a diverse workforce, but certainly a diverse package to attract all these different people. So, in summary, recruitment's about hiring the right people. There's no two ways about it. But one of the biggest problems I've seen in a number of organisations, some that I've worked in, is hiring the right people and then not looking after them. Hiring the wrong people, you kind of work that out pretty quickly. But hiring the right people and looking after them well is key. Values, it says it there on the screen, values establish attitudes which are reflected in behaviours. You will not see a change in behaviours of your people until they buy into your values. So it might be worth going back and having a look at your values and seeing if they actually are relevant for what you believe and what you do as an organisation. And leadership, the culture is driven by your leadership, your senior leadership team. So these people better be good, really, really good. It's the first thing I said earlier, that you pick up on an organisation when you walk into the culture of the place, but it's a living, breathing thing. These people will be your frontline culture, so they better be good. Resilience, definitely build it in. We said, can you train emotional intelligence? Not necessarily, but you can develop it, you can build it in. You have to learn the lessons of failure, and then you have to coach in the good stuff. Look for the silver lining in every call that said, you know, that was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Try that again. And like everything in life, you will try it, and if it works, you'll try it again. And that will be the building of the EI for that person. Perspective, I said it earlier, focus on the here and now. Work with the tangible. If you have an angry customer who just wants to tell you how poorly they've been treated, listen, agree with them, empathise with them. That's the tangible, that's what you know. Because be it real or imagined, that's how the guy feels. So you best agree, because that is his view of your organisation at that time. Work with that and then tell him what you're going to do to put it right. And finally, culture. Understand your organisational culture. Ask everyone to write down what they've got and, more importantly, what they want. And my little caveat is don't be shocked by that, because you might be. But that's a good way of finding out exactly what your organisational culture is. Ask the people within it. So,
thank you very much, Dawn. Brilliant. Just going to change it over to me. We've got a poll now on, let me just launch it. There we go. It's on, do you think the recruitment process shows the true personality of the candidate? Yes, partially, or no? Dawn, what are you hoping to see?
Do you know what I'm expecting to see?
Yeah.
I'm expecting to see a high no.
Well, few more minutes or seconds will right, I'll close it down now and share the results. 55% say partially and 42% say no. Only 3% say yes.
There are clearly a lot of people out there less cynical than me.
Yeah. Jonty, what do you think of the result?
I think it's staggering. We obviously, there's something in the recruitment process that we're really not doing, and I do wonder if it is this. We're looking for the intelligence, but not for the emotional part. And I've got no great solutions to this. The only thing is that over the course of my years, I have seen a number of assessment centres where you put people through a whole set of exercises, a bit like the sort of mini version of the Apprentice. And really, when you watch BBC's Apprentice, by the end of a couple of episodes, you've pretty well weighed up a lot of the true personalities of the individual. So maybe we've got to do more of that type of stuff. Bring people in for, maybe even pay them for a couple of days, saying, we'd like to get you through our assessment centre. We will pay for you to come for a day or two, and we're going to set you some tasks, and we're going to keep a number of people at the end of it. Maybe it needs something like that to sort of stress and get that initial facade off, and really start to see who are the pushy ones, who are the ones who get on with the team, and perhaps who's got the and as Dawn was saying, who's got the resilience, because we do tend to get those people who've got great rapport, great empathy, and then we put them on a complaints line with customers screaming at them, and then we're amazed why they don't stay around for more than 6 months.
I checked some research the other day, and 90% of my top performers were high in emotional intelligence, and it would have been so easy to then move them from the phones into the complaints section or into collections. It would have been so much the wrong thing to do, because they're very curious people, emotionally intelligent people, and they're great on the phone for that reason. They want to find out about people that we're talking to. So assessment centres, I am with you all the way, and I think if we pay for people to come, then yeah, there'll be a lot of people who are put off by the fact that they've got to do an assessment centre, and they're probably not high on emotional intelligence anyway. So, by its very nature, having it as an option could sort you out the ones with from the ones without.
Yeah. Well, the chat room's been flying away, so hopefully we'll get to all the top tips and questions. Had a question in from Carrie, who said, do you know any simple rapport empathy building activities that can be used during new starter induction training? Dawn, I wondered if you'd seen any good ones.
I tell you what, use real scenarios from your contact centre. So the one I always used to use to check empathy, they had to do a role play, and the role play was with a lady called Harriet, who needed a day off because she needed to mate her dog. Pauses for a giggle. And that was because some people like animals, some people don't. Some people would think that would be important, some people wouldn't. So if you find real case scenarios, and it's always around things where a team leader, a team manager finds it easier to drop into a process than actually deal with a real problem. I'm sorry you can't have that day off, there's no holidays available. Sit down with Harriet, find out why, understand why, and try and solve that problem. And if your team managers can't do that, how on earth can they train and coach your staff to do it? So role play with real problems every time.
Jonty, do you have any other suggestions?
I think Dawn is absolutely spot on. Role play was what I was going to suggest as well.
Okay. Right, so we've had a question in from Karen. Is there different advice for non-telephony interactions, such as web chat, Twitter, etc.? Jonty?
I think there's a big danger. We tend to focus very heavily on the telephone. It is a very rich medium for we can get a lot of words in a very short period of time. And I think in things like web chat, I don't think we do a lot of empathy building there. In fact, almost going the other way, because actually when you put 4 web chats on someone's desktop, or even 3, there's a big time lag between when you get back to people. And then it's sort of very, very sort of canned, very abrupt. So I think there's a lot of work that we should be doing on web chat.
Okay, so some quick fire tips. Emma said, don't overscript the web chat side. Have templates, but overscripted doesn't give room for EQ.
She's dead right.
Absolutely.
Mark said, in our contact centre, we try to provide agents with some aids that will help them to improve their mood. Chess, checkers, football, kind of a little gym in the office so they could get rid of their stresses. I think that was from the question earlier about mood building.
Yeah,
that's very good.
Sarah said, we have morning huddles, meetings every morning to motivate the agents to ensure that they start their day on a high and provide the best service they can. Which is,
education and entertainment are not unrelated. If you remember that, those huddles can be phenomenal, really phenomenal. Have a bit of fun.
Yeah. Lisa said, when customers are upset, the agent is allowed to say, Mr. ... I know you're not upset with me, but this is a frustrating issue for you. I'd be happy to help you. And that calms the user down, and they understand the agent is just a person and wants to help. Jonty, what do you think about that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think saying that I can understand why this is frustrating you is a way of displaying empathy, because you're actually feeling the same emotion that the customer is feeling. And once you demonstrate your demonstrating some empathy, you can then start to build some rapport. Good.
Charlie said, stop focusing on AHT. Literally forget about it for a while. Instead, focus on quality. Spend as much time as possible listening to calls. If calls can be quicker, you'll hear it and coach it. He said, I haven't looked at AHT since January, and we're as cost efficient as ever.
Hallelujah, hallelujah.
Charlie, we love you.
Michael's asked a question. Is there a good way to try and change a customer's perception around a situation they're calling for when it feels as if they're unwilling to change their perception? I get really upset and unwilling to listen to your arguments to inform them that it is in fact not how the situation really is. Dawn, I don't know if you have any quick thoughts.
I think, and you do get calls like that. You've got to reach that point where you say, I've exhausted everything, Mr. Smith. I can't tell you anymore how upset I am for you. What will make the difference? Is there anything you can tell me, anything you can advise me that will help make the difference? What do you want me to do? And I think at that point, because there will sometimes be the call where they go, I don't want you to do anything, I just wanted to shout at you.
And I think there's a clue in that question as well about listen to your arguments. That tends to indicate that you're actually arguing with them. So I think it's, is that an element that some of your processes are wrong, that you're constrained by the process and not able to solve the problem? So maybe in this situation, what you've got to do is drill down on the underlying processes and start to look at what the process issues are. And if it's coming up a number of times, it may be that rather than just saying, we'd better process another problem on this, we need to get together a little working party, a couple of people to go off and address this issue, often due to some other failing in the rest of the company.
Yeah.
play them some recordings, bring it to life, go off and solve that problem. So it's not that argument.
Thank you very much. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. So in 1 or 2 words, what did you like best about the webinar? If you could put that into the chat room. Just a reminder that the webinar replay and slides will be available later this afternoon on the following page. And that next week is our last webinar of 2016. We're already beginning 2017 plans, so panic over. I'd just like to thank our speakers for today. Dawn Redmond, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And John T. Pierce from Call Centre Helper, thank you as well.
Thank you. It's been lovely to be here.
Thank you, and goodbye from me. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.